Hello and welcome to another edition of SalesTV Live. Today, we're exploring why human skills will define the future of sales. We're joined by James White. James is a seasoned sales practitioner and coach who has spent decades building outbound engines, designing sales processes, and helping B2B teams convert interest into committed opportunities in complex selling environments. Through his work with high-value B2B service companies and his own outbound teams, he has seen firsthand how changes in buyer expectations, sales technology, and economic pressure are reshaping what effective selling looks like today. James, welcome.
Lovely to thank you for the invite, Robin. Great to be here.
I love to have you here. Thank you. So, James, let's jump right into it. You said that the middle of the funnel is where soft skills matter most. What is it about the middle of the funnel that makes soft skills so decisive? And where are you seeing sellers struggle most in those conversations?
Okay, so let me take the second part of that. So if I talk about what I mean by middle of the funnel, so the middle of the funnel for me is when the leads come in. It's then how do you engage with that first conversation? Maybe it's top of the funnel, but sort of move into the middle. But it's that element of being able to have a conversation with someone in the right way. And the mistakes that I see a lot of people make are that there's an assumption a lot of the time that the people they're talking to, whether they're inbound leads or outbound leads, are, for want of a better phrase, really wanting to do business with them. And it's as if there's this perception that, because they've agreed to have a meeting with me or they've asked to have a meeting with us, they're a done deal. They're a slam dunk before we start. And I think one of the things that great salespeople do is treat every lead as a new clean slate and have a conversation and utilize their skills to focus on understanding first about the audience and the buyer and who they're talking to and what's driving that whole conversation. And then to be in a position where they can then shape the conversation one way or another. It may well be that it doesn't go right, and in which case it's not for them it's not for them. Or it may well be that it is for them and there's an opportunity to develop further time and effort into it. But I think human skills to be able to spot those signs with people are the bits that are the most important part of selling, right? You get that wrong, you lose more often than you win. But you get that right, you can save yourself time, energy, and emotion, and also make sure you protect your own brand and the way you do things as well. So I think it's the most important part of obviously we've got to generate the leads, but I think it's one of the most critical parts of the selling process.
I would agree completely. So in that context, how can we develop the soft skills that matter most in the middle of the funnel?
So look, I think how can you develop them? The first thing I say to salespeople I work with is know yourself, who you are. So I think to know other people, you have to know yourself and what your style is and what you're good at doing. And when you understand yourself, and one of the things that I do a lot of courses around disc profiling for salespeople. So I talk about the four colors, the red, green, red, yellow, blue, and green. Once you understand the style of person that you are, then you can start to also understand your audience and who you're trying to engage with and what that sort of look like. But I think that the challenge again that a lot of salespeople have is they're one-dimensional. They focus on one approach to engage with someone. And actually, you can't be that one-dimensional. If you're dealing with an economic buyer who's an accountant, for example, or a CFO, they're far more likely to be a bit more reserved and a bit calmer, a bit more guarded. They're going to be they like getting blood out of a stone. They're harder to engage with. So therefore, you've got to adjust your approach. Whereas if you're dealing with let's call it a CEO red, who is potentially going to be quite direct and to the point what they want, you've got to adjust your style with that. So for me, being able to know yourself is critical, and then to be able to start to understand the different types of people you're working with and you're talking with, to then know how to approach it. Because if you get that bit wrong, you're going to lose. If you're an effervescent, bubbly salesperson and you're dealing with a CEO or an accountant, CFO, or an engineering director or something like that, that's quite calm and measured and doesn't want to give much away, your OTT approach is going to basically put them off. So you've really got to adjust your skills and your style alongside it. And how to do that, as I say, start by looking at yourself, but also start reading up. I mean, some great videos that I've shared on my channel around the different styles. Start being curious about the people you talk to. Look at the people you engage with. What's their initial engagement when you first jump on a call with them? Are they quite calm and reserved, or are they quite friendly and outgoing? That sometimes is a good starting point to see. So I think it's just being I talk to people a lot about having the emotional sales intelligence to be self-aware. Look at who you're engaging with and what sort of style of person is that, and then start to adjust your approach based around what you get, what information you gather from that conversation.
Based on that emotional sales approach, how can sales leaders help sellers read tone, read emotion, understand buyer signals more effectively?
Great question. And the honest answer is they can provide some training for them on how to do it. So soft skills can be trained. There are a number of things. For example, I always say to people, if someone's doing that in a sales environment, and doing that, what does that mean? Well, there are people that are experts in people science that will tell you that indicates they're thinking, but they're also feeling vulnerable. So therefore, you can utilize your next conversation, your next point to that person might be different than if someone's doing that and sitting in a room and being quite defensive. So being able to sort of train and give people those understanding of those skills, but also being able to pick up on what they're not telling you or the tonality of what people say. So, there's a great study by Albert Morabian a number of years ago that talked about the success of a communication. And 7% of it is only in the words, and the other 93% is in what we say and how we say it. So if you can start to train people on to look out for certain signals in certain calls and certain discussions, and to be self-aware to spot things, then, and that comes from sometimes mentoring, listening to calls, being on calls with those salespeople to see how they've done it, and then going back at certain points. That's a great way to start helping them build those softer skills that can enable them to get things right. And look, by the way, I've seen, sadly, so many salespeople in so many sales situations kibosh a deal by just not judging the situation properly or understanding the scenario. They push when it's not ready, when the prospect's not right to push. And they'll say, oh, well, I've been told I've always got to always be closing or always push for the close. There are some times where you need to lose the battle but win a war. So you're better off to step back and to let that person do their thing rather than to be this desperate, pushy salesperson that then doesn't get the result. So look, in terms of leadership, I think the first thing, my question to them is, if they're not providing that support themselves, invest in some trainers, whether that's through people like myself or other people out there, to give that support and skills, and then to practice it. Practice scenarios. One of the things I do with a lot of sales teams that I coach and work with is we practice scenarios. We practice different ways of people being in a certain situation to know how to react and to respond. And practice, I'm a big believer, is a massive factor that's underused in lots of sales teams. A lot of leaders don't do enough. Set those sessions up and enable your team to practice with you and their colleagues. That's the only way they're also going to get better.
So if human skills are defining the future of sales, is there a space for AI in that process?
Yeah, massively. Look, AI is going to, it's not going away. It's a massive benefit to so many salespeople in terms of things that it can do to help them save time and I think if I look at a sales example of what someone can do in the middle of the funnel, if you're meeting with a prospect, you could ask your AI tool to give you a summary of information on that person, what that information they can find. Right. So there's a good example. I always talk to people about being prepared for a first sales call or a sales conversation, especially if you're selling to business environments. You're probably going to enter with multiple people. So you can get AI to create you a summary of the types of people. What's the background of Rob Durant that I'm meeting today? Where was his previous career? What was he involved in? And the good elements around the tools out there, if that information's there, then it will go and pull that together. So I think, using AI smartly is the way I describe it to people is AI is like a sous chef. It's not the chef that's going to send the meal out and to make sure that the meal is perfectly cooked, but it's the chef that can cut the vegetables and make sure that everything's done and prepared, ready for the chef to then do their work. And I think that's how I see AI at the moment operating. I don't think in time, AI is going to probably do an awful lot more. It may end up being It may end up taking all of our jobs. You never know. But I think for the next 5 to 10 years, the one thing I don't think a robot can do is going to be able to judge a human being and really what's going on in that person's mind and what's going on in their world. I don't think a robot's going to be able to do that like a human can if trained and told, shown how to do it for some time.
So I want to pick up on that robot theme. How do I ensure my sellers show up as human rather than scripted or robotic?
And that's a great question. Again, it comes down to two things. I think there's some basics that they've got to have in place. And I always say to people, when you watch, George Clooney or, Anne Hathaway or, any of these great actors or actresses, they don't sound scripted on the film. They don't read out the words as if to say this is a script. They've practiced, they know what they're going to say, and then they apply their skills to be able to utilize those words in the right way. So I think that what we've got to get salespeople to do is understand the basics of what they've got to share and what they've got to do. What is the phrases and scripts or outlines that they've got to use, but then how can they then start to deliver that in a way that sounds personable? So that's the first thing. And that again comes back to practice, and then practice and repetition over time enables you to feel comfortable to say things. And then when you know how to say things, you can then start to elevate certain words within that conversation. I think the other part of that is also to understand that I believe every person you engage with in a sales conversation is unique and different. There's a story, there's a journey that they've had. So just be curious, be curious about the other side, not about what is my message to salespeople at the moment. I say this time and time again to people. Buyers don't give a monkey's backside for you and what you do and who you are. Even though you might think they do, they don't care for that. What they care for is what impact can you make in their world? What problem can you solve for them? What challenge can you take away from them? What goal can you help them achieve? And if you can show those elements, then people will, and show that you're truly interested in them, then they'll start to have conversations with you. But if you start to just be this robotic, another one, then I think ultimately you're gonna. Who wants to be treated like that? I don't think buyers want to be treated like that.
No, I would agree completely. So then how do we differentiate our outreach so it doesn't sound like every other message to every other prospect, or more importantly, so it doesn't sound like every other seller out there?
Yeah, look, and I think that's a really great question again. And one of the key things that I talk about is two things that I think that happen with that. First one is make your outreach slightly more personalized, and that's harder, right? Because when you're trying to engage with a large volume audience, and we all know outreach and outbound prospecting, you've got to kiss lots of frogs to get princes and princesses. So the challenge to do that, but one of the things that I encourage people to do is to really identify their audience, who they want to work with, and why they're a good fit for them, and what problems they can solve for them, and then really start to go in with value over a period of time consistently across other medias. So my approach that I will work with sales teams will be, okay, let's say we've identified 100 people that we think are perfect fit for what we do. We know the typical challenges that they have. So, okay, let's identify a campaign over a period of, let's say, 3 months, 6 months, where we are interfacing with that person through call potentially, but through email, through social media, through video prospecting. So utilizing videos like Vidyard or Loom to do video prospecting. Direct mail, I still think lumpy mail has a massive role to play in this, even and then obviously voice noting and face-to-face. So how can you build a campaign that shows that person that you're not being stalky, but you're interested in them? You've seen what's going on in their world. You understand their situation and what's happening. And you at least they're able to see that this is what they've done and how they've done it. And there is a balance between not being OTT with that, but doing enough to make people realize that they know that the prospect knows that you've had a look at their, not just briefly looked at their LinkedIn profile, but you've really had a look at some of their content that they write, or some of the videos that they shared, or what blog have they created, and start to open up conversations around those things and start to open up dialogue around that. And that's where I think the people that get success in outreach are using that sort of personalized approach to try and open up a door. Once they open up the door, they then start to become curious around what that person's doing and how they're doing it.
So, what about the sellers who are struggling? How can sales leaders identify sellers who are struggling with emotional intelligence skills, and what can they do to help them?
Great question. So the honest answer is firstly, and I don't think this is done often enough anymore. Listen to us. If you've got a salesperson that's struggling, I did this actually today with one of my team. I have a team of outsourced. We provide outsourced salespeople for organizations. I had one of my team who was, I think has been struggling to engage with a certain type of audience. And I asked him today as to what challenges he'd faced, and he said he's dealing with an objection of people saying, "I'll talk to me after Christmas." So I said to him, "Okay, well, we need to listen to that call and those calls." And he sent us through a few calls for us to listen to. And I'll listen when I'm in the car. I'll listen to a few of those calls, and I'll be able to automatically sense, okay, from the reaction that he's getting, how could he handle that objection better? So firstly, sales leaders have got to provide some support and help to their team. I think one of the things that I see a lot actually is that sales leaders demand a lot but don't give a lot back. And the challenge around that is, if you're not giving to your team with that time and knowledge and experience of, to review a call or to sit in on a meeting with them, how are they going to learn? I guess the other thing I'm also looking for if I'm a sales leader with those type of salespeople is what is that person doing themselves to get out of their rut? What are they doing to change? Is it something that they've just accepted and they're just carrying on a mundane sort of every day, as it was, or are they trying to learn? Are they trying to show that they're trying to develop those skills? Again, I had two guys in my team, and I said to them, what have you been learning around the industry and and the circumstances and the prospects you're talking to? What do you know? And both of them said to me, we haven't learned that much. And I'm like, well, that's not acceptable. If they're dealing with IT directors, I said, your job is to know what's going on in the brain of that IT director. So it's about their attitude to continue to pick up on those things, but also the support and help to develop them and to engage in them. I think is really important. But yeah, look, I think those are the things that I think are key. And then the final element to me is also about this is expectations. So what are the expectations of the sales leaders? Very often, I think sales leaders have an expectation of numbers to be at a certain level, but yet they've never done those numbers themselves. So my challenge to sales leaders is, okay, don't just tell people how it's done, show them how it's done. I will pick up the phone, I will talk to people, I will do any meeting with the sales team that I need to, because if I can't show my team how it's done, why should I expect them to do it themselves? And I think sales leaders think that job's beneath them a little bit now, I think they need to get sometimes back in the trenches. And there's nothing better than getting a salesperson that's struggling to see their leader, help them out in that situation. If they're the right type of character and they're the right type of person, like the things I've talked about, they're going to want to then put that effort in to try and change their situation.
I heard you say that sales leaders demand a lot but don't give a lot. And you gave a little bit of an example around that. Do you have a tick box list of things that you would expect sales leaders to regularly give to their sales representatives?
Yeah, I think I have a list. I have a list of stuff to them to give. One of the big things I say, Rob, that I don't think most sales leaders do is take time to understand the people that work with them. So, I learned this from sport, and I've worked with some. I've been involved with some sporting organisations with some leaders and managers and coaches in that space who, have understood that, in order to be able to get the best from someone, you need to understand their situation. Now, I'm not saying you want to have, war and peace on, that person's problem with their family or whatever else, but you do need to understand their drivers and what motivates them. There's no successful sales teams I've had where we've created vision boards for the sales team, where we've outlined what they want to do, what they want to earn, how they want to achieve things over the course of the next couple of years, how they can put those elements in place. And then, I've challenged those people to say, okay, right, this is your vision board, it's not mine. What can I do to support you to make that happen? What do you need from me? And I'm going to then create what I call a contract between the two of us that says, here's what I'll provide you to get there, but here's what I want in return. I want that learning, I want that self-development, I want that commitment to getting better. So I think having that conversation in the first place and trying, if I ask sales leaders right now, how many of them know their team really well and what's going on in their world and what's happening, not sure I'd get some of the answers that And I say not, when I say know them well, really just don't just say, oh yeah, I know they've got a wife and 2 kids, but know about their kids. What is their kids, are their kids playing sport? Are their kids in school, facing challenges of education? Is their wife going through a difficult, or husband going through a difficult time in their role? All of those things affect the salesperson and can affect them to do things. So I think becoming that sort of personal approach. But then I use a simple method called MIST, Rob, which is to motivate, and to inform, to support, and to train. And I think for me, those are the 4 things that motivate, give them that support and that motivation, that belief they can. Inform them, communicate about changes in the business or what's going on, and make sure you're keeping communication lines open. Support is about, like I said, listening to calls and attending meetings with them, and train them, give them the expertise, give them the knowledge. If they haven't got that, then give them some help to become better.
I love it. MIST. Okay, James, if you were to emphasize the one thing you would want our audience to take away from today's episode, what would that one thing be?
Build emotional sales intelligence, and the 5 factors within those that to ensure that you waste less time and bring more deals through. If you become emotionally sales intelligent and are able to really think like your buyer, then you can win lots of deals and save yourself a lot of time in the process.
Oh, I love it. And you said there are 5 elements within that?
Yeah, so 5 elements. So Daniel Goleman, when he created the concept of emotional intelligence, created 5 elements. So self-awareness, the ability to know what's going on around you and to spot, okay, well, what's happening here? That person's scrolling on their phone, they're bored, they're tuned out, and engage with that. Self-control, the ability to keep your mouth shut sometimes, or to not react and respond in certain ways. Motivation, the ability to, what I call your duvet chuck. What's your reason to get up in the morning? What's your reason to do something? Socialization, the ability to build relationships and to build networks and people around you that you can do business with. And the final one, which is probably probably one of the most important, but is empathy. And I think sellers need to, especially in the human world, put yourself in the shoes of your buyer. Sit there and think about how your buyer is operating. What are the things that are going through your buyer's mind? Your job, your job as a salesperson is to be a fly on the wall in their brain. Okay, to be a fly on the wall in their brain. What are they thinking? What's their worries? What's their concerns? What are they worried about? What are they happy about? What are they nervous about? What are they comfortable about? Become a bit obsessed by trying to work out what's going on inside their brain, and what's it feel like from their perspective. And if you do those 5, if you can develop those 5 skills, then I think you'll go a long way.
Fantastic. James, this has been great. On behalf of everyone at SalesTV Live, to you and to our audience, thank you for being an active part in today's conversation.
No, you're very welcome.
Awesome. If you like what you heard today, please take a moment to leave a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Substack, or YouTube. Let us know what you learned and what you'd like to learn more about. Your feedback helps us reach more people like you and fulfill our need to elevate the profession of sales.